Hi guys, I'm Anne.
And I'm Wendell, and welcome to WTA Projects.
So hi guys, I'm Alexa and right now we're about to start a meeting with the Vice Mayor of Siargao, Vice Mayor J.R. Coro, and his team for us to present what we've done and what Anne and Wendell have actually produced for the relocation sites in Siargao Island. Hi Vice Mayor!
Hello, good morning. Sorry for being late.
No worries, no problem.
Yeah, we were corrected also. So it should not be relocation, should be resettlement. You cannot force people to move. It has to be voluntary.
We'll be very conscious of the word relocation and we'll make it resettlement. Out of curiosity lang, Vice Mayor, where are the families right now?
They're in coastal areas, mostly are, and the DNR placed structures that mentions no-build zones based on standards of the E-NIPAS Act of 20.
Okay, so right now they're all temporarily located in various areas.
There might be changes in the land size, madam.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're conducting a biodiversity assessment.
We wanted to cluster different groups of families together so that they also have access to amenities at equal distances. We didn't want someone to be too far to a certain amenity, which is why the multi-purpose hall is central to everybody. Then we allotted open spaces and general landscapes all throughout. And then we noticed kasi there's a 4-meter 2-meter easement on each back end of each lot. So instead, these families can actually share these as shared garden spaces for gardening, for farming, so that it will also help them also with their food. And so we have one major road, which is 10 meters wide, and we made sure to minimize it so that we could just focus on open spaces. Really well-designed open spaces and amenities and children's designated zones for children is something we really gave importance to, so that they could also enjoy living or engaging in their own personal activities and lifestyles.
So the window design is heavily inspired by the culture and lifestyle of Siargao, and the window design wants to represent what Siargao is. So it having the perfect wave, having a teardrop-shaped island, and it being known as a surfing capital of the Philippines, and being abundant in coconut trees. For designs nila, tas isa lang yung pipiliin ng user.
Actually, I know speed is also an issue. So, but we tried to make it look as beautiful as we can for everybody. But then, if you do want a plain design, that's also okay. But then if you do want to pick any of the designs, we will make plans for these so that it could be easily replicated or done on site. Baka pwede po in the future when there's more time and budget, they can engage in rainwater catchment.
Pwede i-incorporate nyo na po yan kasi that's really
A must?
one of the things we normally do.
Oh, okay.
Like for example, in the island communities we have 4. Prior to the typhoon, everybody had its own rain catchment. Pangalawa po, under the building code ng protected landscapes and seascapes, required kang magkaroon ng sariling rain catchment.
Okay.
Kasi rain, ang ating water source is very scarce. Tapos since type 2 weather kami, so we have rain the whole year. Yun yung parang primary drinking water source mo.
Sorry. Hi, okay, so we just ended our meeting with the local government of Del Carmen, Siargao. And Anne and Wendell presented their plans and ideas for the resettlement sites. And I think it was well received because the mayor and the vice mayor seem to have liked it and are looking forward to building the first prototype house. Just to give you an idea of the project, the Siargao project is a project for the Siargao Island and the families affected by Typhoon Odette. So the project calls for resettlement site plans for 3 identified locations, as well as a prototype housing design. Now, some of the challenges that we faced were deciding on whether to build row houses or single detached homes. And also, we also had to work with a budget, as well as materials, the materials to be used, whether they were available or unavailable in the island. And something we incorporated into the design was the use of coconut lumber, cocoa lumber. Because of the amount of coconut trees that fell during the typhoon, there's an abundance of unused coconut trunks, tree trunks in the island. And in a matter of a few months or weeks, those coconut trunks would be rotting or be infested by termites. The 3 sites that were identified include a 10-hectare site in Barangay Mabuhay, an 8.5-hectare site in Barangay Del Carmen, and a 3-hectare site in Barangay Bitoon. Kevin and I started with the initial site development plan, and it's really very tricky to come up with a plan at a limited amount of time. So Kevin here will talk about what went on with the initial phase of this project.
In crafting the plans, we started following the BP 220 guidelines, which is the
Socialized housing.
socialized housing. For me, as a planner, as a transport planner, first thing I considered is the accessibility of the sites to the main roads. For the second site, Del Carmen, it's near the poblacion area. So I considered extending the grid of the poblacion area towards the resettlement site. One of my urban planning inspiration with that is the ones in Barcelona, in which every 9 blocks there's an empty block that's an open space. Then I also put a big open space for a community open space in Bitoon. It's quite tricky because it's near the borders of 2 municipalities. But the potential for this site is huge since it's near the airport and near the seaport. So initially I created 2 access points, one leading to Del Carmen and one leading to the municipality in the south. So what I considered there is the accessibility first, then the number of houses based on BP 220, then open spaces for everyone.
Jumping right off from what Alexa and Kevin showed us earlier, we'll start with the one they made for Barangay Mabuhay. We had Will check this actually. He pointed out some key flaws to the plan. One of it was that why did you make it a curvilinear road? Tapos sabi niya pa, it's curvilinear pero hindi pa siya organic. So that was one of the things we improved on when the master plan was turned over to us. So this is what he sketched. You can see the transformation from this and then to this to a more livable space. Pero we can see na the reason why it was first layouted like this is because we wanted to make it more efficient. We can fit in as much houses as we can in one site. Pero the site is also tricky kasi sa perimeter, it's very flood prone according to the flood hazard map.
But the site itself isn't.
Dito sa gitna, the middle part is well above the flood level.
Okay.
So that's why the greens are all sprawled over the perimeter. And then the reason then for why the road is like this is to connect from point A to point B. There would be a connecting road here and then also here. What stood out sa plan na to was that it's mainly dominated by road networks, which doesn't really portray what Filipino life is, right? What does Filipino families have in their communities? They like to gather in places, play basketball,
It's
Zumba.
It's very community heavy.
Yun nga. And then, sabi ni Will, why is, parang kalat. Your green spaces are kalat. And then, that's why he outlined the green spaces first. The way I see it was that it's like he was outlining the void, which is the green space, so that it also brings out the community spaces. So from the main road where the vehicular access, yung mga kotse, the cars would only be limited to this main spine. Yung transition niya to the homes is that there would be 6-meter wide roads in case they wanted motorcycles. And then from there, the pathway narrows down to footpaths na that would directly access.
So you have a hierarchy of different access. You have, I guess, the major road for cars, and then
Yeah.
6 meters for smaller vehicles and people, and then
And then 4 meters sparse footpaths. And then we also designed it in a way that in designing houses, there needs to be rear setbacks then, right? And then para hindi sayang yung rear setbacks, we also made them shared gardens for each houses. So there's really an abundance of greenery in this place. And then kumbaga, if we have shared gardens, we're also encouraging our homeowners to have farming as another way of life here. Kasi they're relocating from the sea over to, this one is located in timberland, yung maraming puno na. So it's a really different lifestyle then. And then there would be a catchment basement here because this is the deepest part in the site. And it will flow down there. And then, sabi ni Will na we do the other sites naman. So another one is the Barangay del Carmen. This is how it started out. Also maximizing efficiency first. We're just adding the green spaces to where the central spine is din. Kung saan dadaan yung kotse. When you enter the subdivision, it's like, ang una mo makikita is yung green open spaces where the people gather. It's basically the same. So parang in-offset lang namin from the shape and outline of the site. And then from there, there is also an equal access from each block. Tapos medyo awkward din kasi tong site na to. So you could see that.
yeah, there's a tail.
Oh, yun nga eh. And then there are awkward triangular shapes.
Yeah.
Which also opened up opportunities to create green spaces pa.
You have these like random things here, I guess.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. But I think it's a common theme. Like it's also like not just with housing, like especially when we're doing like office spaces or condominiums. We always try to like study the feasibility first, like see how much we can fit, and then try to be the most efficient we can first, and then we start chipping away and playing with the masses.
Actually, lahat talaga ganyan dumadaan.
Yeah, right.
no?
So I think it's also important because we don't want to be designing the super nice buildings that don't work, right? Like let's say you do the most ideal, the most green housing like space in the world, but then you're not housing enough people, then so what's the point?
Yun nga eh.
It's always the first step in all our projects that we always try to do the feasibility study first. Well, at least that's what we'll always
Kumbaga,
let us
we
do.
meet
Yeah.
the demand first. And
And then
we make
we
it
see-
more interesting.
Yeah. I think it makes architecture easier and it makes it more realistic.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, which makes it more fun also.
But actually, the client was really happy nga kasi they were only expecting 1,000 units. But we were able to house more than that. I think it's 1,200 in total na for all 3 sites. Tapos, di pa nila akalain na we could make it interesting for the
Yeah.
people who live there.
Like it doesn't have to be a
Yun nga
barracks.
eh. It looks like, yeah, yun nga.
It doesn't have to be a barracks. But what was a problem that you guys saw here and then you added yourselves? Or like what was like very interesting about the site that's not common?
I think it was mostly visible here in the Barangay Mabuhay. I think this is where we had the most fun then. This is the site that we also like the most because there's much more greenery here at the perimeter. And then
Third
I
pop.
think you could see that later on dun na sa house.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's more in the architecture
Yeah, it's
than
more in the
plan.
architecture than the plan. Site-wise, this is also the reason why this is the most jam-packed kasi this one is closer to the poblacion, as what Kevin said earlier.
What did you guys take away or learn from this?
I really had no experience in planning a subdivision. So this was it. The way Will showed me how to sketch and plan yung step by step niya. It made me think that there really is a process in how subdivisions are planned, and then
Or should be planned.
should be planned
Yeah.
kung ano yung priority mo and what spaces can go together so that the whole zoning of the whole plan would be more efficient.
There's obviously the first instinct for any developer, I guess, or anyone who's trying to make things fit. It's always the barrack situation where it's
Yeah.
just a grid and fit everything together. But I think, like when we were doing Horizon, you can also see the process of like how to plan something as a designer and a planner, and not just just putting buildings together or houses together. So there really is like there's steps and there are things to look at and considerations, and like you have to consider all the possibilities, and then you kind of weave these things together, and that takes a process, like you said.
Yeah, and diba, it's like we're always going after numbers when we plan for this. Like
Yeah.
we have this quota. To make something interesting doesn't mean na masasacrifice yung quota.
I think so because like numbers will always lead to efficiency, and rightfully so. That's why we have to compute everything. Like at the end of the day, these houses, this plan isn't about just the numbers. At the end of the day, they're about the people who live there and the families who are there, the community that's there. So wherever there are people and there's context and there's greens and wherever there's a community, there's always going to be a story to tell, and there's always going to be design and planning and architecture to do, I think.
Okay. So in doing the design of the house, we have three main considerations. So first is the budget. It's actually one of the many challenges we face in doing the design, since the budget is very limited. And then the next thing we considered is it has to be as modular as possible. So it's easy to construct and it is quick to construct as well. Keeping in mind that we have to provide for 1,000 families in Siargao. And then lastly, it should be sustainable because the housing is expected to last for several years. The materials we thought of using is fiber cement board and then amakan sheet. So combination of those and a little bit of CHB wall for the areas that needed extra protection. The fiber cement board is one of the materials that are suited because one, it's cost effective and it provides enough protection sa environmental hazards as well. And then the amakan sheet naman, it allows passive ventilation.
Is this Amahan sheet local?
We got inspired sa traditional bahay kubo. With regards sa supplier naman, the amakan sheets I'm not sure if there's a supplier sa Siargao. Yeah.
But I heard when there are times that you can't find materials in Siargao, then you have to get it from neighboring cities.
Yeah.
So there you go. So, what about like the architecture wise, like without the materials and all this? How did you draw the line from the materials, the requirements, and what did you come up with basically?
The form of the house is very modular. So we started off with the structural being allowing the standard size of materials such as 1.2 by 2.4 diba yung sizes ng plywood, and as well as sa amakan sheet same din. So we did that because we need to use the materials as efficient as possible. So less cutting, less work.
It's interesting, like, because when you're doing bigger projects, materials, I guess, don't affect your form and your plans as much, right? Because like, what's a 2x4 to like 1,000 square meter plan, right? But I guess it's unique in this case because those things matter, because you have to get it built as soon as possible, as easy as possible. So like, it's kind of interesting how materials affect projects differently in like smaller scales and stuff.
Actually, the materials also affect this project directed by the budget constraints. Like for example, like instead of using the common construction method, in collaboration with our engineers, we decided to have a concrete and wood construction method only. So by this time, we can provide the pedestal and we can have the wood as post.
So it's not embedded like a
Yeah.
footing.
Yeah, let's like embedded like a putting so that we can avoid
Extensive,
Yeah, extensive.
extensive labor and
Okay. So it takes less work too.
less
But
work
it's the same
and less
principles
cost.
also. Yeah, it's just doing. It's basically still post and lintel, just with different, I guess, cheaper, easier materials.
it also allows us to protect the house because it is elevated.
So the need to elevate the house is for us to protect the house from termites attacks, and also it provides passive ventilation.
So it's kind of cool, like how in like Philippine architecture, usually we always try to like go to like the bahay kubo and all these things, just because people are used to it, Philippine architecture. But it's kind of cool, like you're doing this project without the thought of trying to look like a bahay kubo, but except you're doing it because you need to do all those principles. You have to use all those principles like ventilation and like protecting from the ground. So it's like you're doing Filipino and tropical architecture not on purpose, but out of necessity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's kind of cool that we always have to go back to
The
the
basics.
basic principles of. It's kind of like a good peek at how we do things actually. It's a smaller version of our process for bigger projects, essentially.
Yeah, because the design is also directed also, di ba? In terms of sustainability. It gives us the design that saves money, saves time, and also saves manpower at the same time.
Like one important thing that especially with this project, is like not all of them they're not fancy just because to be fancy, I guess, or they're not flashy to be flashy. It's because where in this scenario, basically, we can't afford to look past the necessities, which is, a living space for people, especially during the calamity and all that. So,
And the project also, it's like a level of bahay kubo. So even if the budget is very limited, we didn't compromise the aesthetic aspect of the building.
yeah, I think it's not about making the buildings look nice for the sake of being nice.
Yeah.
I think good design is also dignifying to the people that live there.
Yeah.
Of course, we try to do what we can with what we have. And I think that's a good example. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed the peek at our process and projects. And I hope you can join us again sometime.
Yay.